Welcome to Deception Narrative Workshop. I used to believe safeguarding oneself was about constructing barriers. Now I understand it's about creating snares. My name is Blake. For 6 years, I believed our relationship was genuine, the kind where we divided the mortgage, synchronized grocery shopping, and discussed retirement plans over Sunday breakfast. Brooke and I weren't the pair who flaunted every anniversary on social media, but we were reliable, or so I assumed. The initial fissure emerged on a Tuesday in March. "I'm contemplating a getaway with the girls," Brooke mentioned, not glancing up from her phone. "My mother and Sienna are planning a spa retreat, possibly 5 days long. 5 days, not 2, not a weekend. A full 5 days. That sounds appealing," I replied, because one does when they trust someone. "When? Perhaps the second week of April." I gave a nod and returned to my laptop. I oversaw a modest commercial property management firm, nothing extravagant, but it was financially rewarding. On partial employment at a boutique marketing company where roles were more labeled than deadline-bound, an ordinary discussion left a lingering impression. It wasn't the event itself, but the tone of delivery that caught my attention. Casually rehearsed was how she delivered it, and for 3 days I let it slide. On Friday, though, I returned home earlier. Brooke's laptop remained on the kitchen counter, her email still active. "I harbor no sense of shame or pride about what followed," I admitted to myself, peeking. The email exchange was with someone named Pierce. The topic, April logistics, aroused my curiosity. I read 5 messages, and that was enough to understand her eagerness. "I eagerly anticipate the upcoming week, free from his constant presence. The scheduled account transfer is set for the 10th. Upon its completion, we will gain freedom." I had sat down, reread the transfer details, and then opened our banking app. We possess 3 accounts: a joint checking account where both our salaries are deposited, a joint savings account with approximately $40,000, and a single business account in my name linked to my company with substantial funds. The joint accounts were part of our mutual understanding, symbolizing transparency, partnership, and equal ownership. I confirmed the account permissions. Both Brooke and I had full access, enabling us to move funds or close the account whenever desired. This was the trust established or the vulnerability created. Over that weekend, I found myself performing a task I hadn't anticipated: researching forensic accountants, divorce lawyers, and asset protection strategies. By Sunday night, I devised a plan that seemed both insane and necessary. On Monday, I contacted Barrett, a lawyer I had utilized once for a commercial lease dispute, direct, no drama. I shared everything: the email, the girls' trip details, account access details, how much was in our joint accounts, around $42,000 combined, and my business account balance, $215,000. Barrett inquired about the latter since she didn't have access to it. I informed him that the business account was only in my name. Barrett suggested a sequence of actions over the next 10 days. First, we moved the business account to a different bank entirely, setting up a new login with no traceable connections to anything Brooke could track. Then we took more aggressive action, emptying the joint accounts not to hide money, but to safeguard it. I transferred every dollar into a separate account at a third bank, established specifically for marital asset preservation pending legal review. This simply meant that I was placing everything in a secure container she couldn't touch until the court decided our fate. I asked Barrett what would happen if Brooke tried to access the accounts before April. He responded that she'd discover they were empty, thus realizing I was onto her. True to his prediction, Brooke didn't check the accounts during those 6 years since she trusted me. On April 8th, Brooke went for a spa weekend, and I helped her pack and load the car. After she drove off, I called Barrett to report that she was gone. Barrett informed me that Brooke would attempt to transfer the money on the 10th, and when she did, I should document everything: screenshots, timestamps, any communication from her. If she accused me of moving the funds first, we needed proof that she initiated the theft. Barrett consistently referred to it as theft. On April 10th, I received a text from Brooke inquiring about transferring money for spa charges. I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, she texted again, demanding to know where the money was. I let her voicemails go unanswered, and when they shifted tone, I forwarded them to Barrett. Brooke returned home on April 11th instead of the planned 15th, appearing with just her purse and a calculating expression. She demanded the money, but I explained that it was secure, safe from both our reach until we figured out what was happening. Her reaction was unexpected calculation, as if she were running scenarios to determine which story would work. I told her that I wanted a divorce, and she blinked in surprise. However, she had already filed for divorce, a lie intended to gauge my reaction. When confronted with the email thread, Brooke's demeanor changed dramatically. She claimed that the transfer comment was about a different account and that I was overreacting. But none of her arguments held water because she hadn't anticipated this situation. In the ensuing legal trench warfare, Brooke hired Coleman, an attorney with a reputation for intense asset fights, who accused me of hiding marital funds, locking her out of accounts without cause, and violating her financial rights. Barrett countered with the email thread, text messages, and a timeline showing that Brooke had planned the transfer before I moved anything. Coleman then attempted a different angle, filing a motion claiming that the business account, the one with $215,000, was marital property because I had started the company during our marriage. That almost worked, but Kansas is an equitable distribution state, and exceptions could be made if I could prove that the business was funded with separate property, inheritance, premarital assets, or gifts. I had used some of that funding, so Barrett and I prepared our proof. Blake's business was funded with separate assets and kept distinct finances during marriage. Brooke contributed neither capital, labor, nor management, making it non-marital property. Coleman attempted to claim Brooke's emotional support had contributed to the business, but Judge Foster dismissed this in a brief statement. Emotional support is not a tangible asset, Coleman argued. If so, all spouses would be entitled to half of everything by virtue of proximity to success. That's not how equitable distribution functions. From my vantage point in the courtroom, Brooke exhibited the expression of one who had staked everything on a losing hand. However, Coleman persisted, shifting his argument to joint accounts. "Your Honor," Mr. Coleman said, "the joint accounts should be considered as marital property." Blake independently withdrew $42,000 from shared accounts, which is considered financial abuse, argued Barrett. "I'd like to present Exhibit F, the email conversation detailing the account transfer, highlighted in full on a poster board," stated Barrett. The email showed that Brooke intended to move all marital funds without Blake's knowledge or approval, explained Barrett. However, he didn't engage in financial abuse. Rather, he prevented theft, asserted Barrett. Judge Foster inspected the email and looked at both parties. "Does your client challenge the authenticity of this communication?" questioned Foster, to which Coleman hesitated before replying that there was no dispute about its validity. Foster then leaned back. Blake defended himself justifiably over marital property, motion dismissed. It was then when Brooke accepted her impending loss at the June hearing. Two secrets discovered during the discovery phase disheartened Coleman. First, Pierce wasn't simply a friend, but a financial advisor Brooke had been involved with for 7 months. They met at a networking event and began their affair shortly after, leading Pierce to persuade her that my company was undervalued, entitling her to half its worth. Secondly, Brooke had consulted an independent forensic accountant in February, not Vaughn's, who suggested she could claim up to 50% of the business's value if she could prove her contributions in a divorce. Unfortunately, she paid for that consultation using our shared account. During the discovery phase, Barrett uncovered a transaction worth $1,500 to Mitchell and Associates Forensic Accounting. She had orchestrated this for months, stated Barrett. Using marital funds, she devised a scheme to embezzle marital funds. Judge Foster was not entertained by her actions, and at the conclusion of the hearing, he distributed the assets with the accuracy of someone familiar with this situation 100 times. The joint accounts were divided equally, leaving Brooke with $21,000. In the divorce settlement, I received the business and its accounts, declared as separate property, leaving Brooke with nothing. Our shared house was sold after paying off the mortgage, resulting in equal distribution of $38,000 each for both parties. Brooke bore her own legal expenses due to the accumulated 42,000 billable hours by Coleman when the judgment was read. Upon hearing the verdict, Brooke displayed no tears or outbursts but a vacant stare. I felt an unexpected emotion, neither triumph nor relief, just exhaustion. Subsequently, Pierce vanished from Brooke's life the week following the judgment, and Barrett learned through legal circles that Pierce was married the entire time, leading to his wife filing for divorce 2 months later. I am unaware of Brooke's whereabouts currently. My sister Ruby once questioned if Brooke truly loved me or if it was all a calculated move from the start. I believe she couldn't distinguish between love and opportunity. She saw my business as something she deserved half because she was nearby during its development, viewing our joint accounts as rightfully hers due to her assumption that I wouldn't notice until it was too late. However, she was mistaken on both counts. 6 months post-divorce, I received a letter from Coleman's office stating Brooke was appealing the judgment, asserting new evidence supported a division of the business. Barrett scoffed at the appeal, dismissing her claim that emotional labor equates to sweat equity. Foster had already rejected this argument as futile. The appellate court dismissed the appeal in 3 weeks. Following this incident, I rebuilt not just my business, but my understanding of partnership. I became cautious in dating, recognizing red flags missed with Brooke, learning that trust is distinct from naivety. A year later, I met someone named Esther. During our initial conversation about finances, she said something amusing. "I don't care about what you earn, I care if you are honest about it." We have been together for 8 months now. Last week, Esther inquired about joint accounts. I responded potentially after marriage and upon signing a prenuptial agreement, to which she did not react adversely, demonstrating her astuteness. This experience with Brooke taught me that caution isn't paranoia but preparation for the worst while hoping for the best, ensuring readiness should the worst transpire. I didn't triumph due to cruelty, but through carefulness. I documented everything, consulted legal advice before making any moves, and allowed Brooke's words to expose her intentions. The joint accounts were not the ultimate goal. They served as a test. If I had done nothing, she would have taken the $42,000 and then pursued the business. But I wasn't blindsided. In the morning when Brooke attempted to move funds that she believed were illicitly acquired from someone who relied on her, she inadvertently initiated a fraud case against herself. Barrett clarified this to me later. When she tried to manage those accounts after you had filed for divorce, even though she hadn't been served yet, she engaged in the intentional dissipation of marital assets. Had she been successful, we could have brought criminal charges, but it was unnecessary because the civil judgment sufficed. Consequently, Brooke lost the accounts, her claim to the business, Pierce, and spent more on legal fees than what she would have received if she had honestly filed for divorce initially. A spreadsheet that Barrett sent me after everything was settled compares what Brooke would have received in a standard uncontested divorce versus what she ended up getting from the contested battle. In an ordinary divorce, she would have received approximately $95,000, half of the house equity, half of the joint accounts, no business claim. Divorce settlement following an unsuccessful burglary endeavor, $59,000, half the home equity, half the remaining shared accounts, less legal expenses. She paid $36,000 to demonstrate her untrustworthiness. I did not celebrate upon receiving the verdict, neither did I communicate with her nor post about it on social media. Instead, I simply placed the folder Barrett provided in a filing cabinet and returned to my job. Ruby hosted a celebration of my independence that weekend. In a gathering with her husband and a few close friends, we prepared burgers, drank beer, and avoided discussing Brooke. At one point, Ruby observed that I seemed lighter, to which I agreed it felt as if I'd been holding my breath for 6 months before finally letting it out. Following this release, my business flourished. Not fretting over someone sabotaging my finances freed up a significant amount of mental energy. I added 2 new property managers, expanded into an adjacent county, and boosted revenue by 30%. This progress would have been impossible if I had spent the past year quarreling over Brooke's alleged entitlement to half. People occasionally ask me if I harbor bitterness or hatred towards her, but I don't. I despise what she attempted, her misjudgment of my intelligence. However, I do not loathe her. She made a series of poor choices and suffered the consequences. In contrast, I made a wise choice by trusting my instincts when something felt wrong and safeguarding what I had built. This is the distinction between us. Brooke viewed marriage as a contract with loopholes, while I regarded it as a partnership requiring accountability. When she attempted to exploit the former, she discovered that the latter was legally enforceable. The last time I encountered her was during the final settlement signing at Barrett's office. We exchanged papers, walked out through opposite doors without farewells or closure speeches, only signatures and silence. Coleman extended his hand to me as I departed, but I declined to shake it. Barrett escorted me to my car, inquiring about my feelings. I was tired, he explained, which was normal considering I'd been in fight mode for 6 months. When would it end? Whenever I chose it to, I decided that day. I returned home, erased Brooke's contact from my phone, and blocked her on every platform, not out of anger, but out of finality. Reflecting on that Tuesday in March when she suggested a girls' trip, I don't feel betrayed. Instead, I feel thankful. Grateful for her carelessness in leaving an email open, grateful for my intelligence in recognizing the situation, grateful for Barrett's expertise in protecting what was mine, and grateful for heeding the instinct that something was amiss. Betrayal rarely occurs abruptly. It's a sequence of small decisions, lies, and justifications that accumulate into a disaster. Brooke didn't suddenly decide to rob me. She began by resenting my success, then confided in Pierce, then believed she deserved more than she earned, and eventually planned how to take it. Each step seemed reasonable to her at the time, which is how betrayal operates, incrementally and rationalized. By the time I realized what was happening, Brooke had already convinced herself that I was the wrongdoer. She believed that supporting me entitled her to a share of my business, despite her minimal contribution. The law disagreed, so here I am, 2 years later, solely managing a thriving enterprise. My partner respects boundaries, and I sleep soundly at night. Brooke is elsewhere, engaged in other activities with other people, a chapter closed for me. I don't know the details. I choose not to revisit that past. The lesson I carry forward isn't never trust anyone. It's trust cautiously, document thoroughly, and act decisively when something seems amiss. The alternative is waking up one day to find empty accounts, a manipulative ex-partner, and an unexpected legal battle. I was prepared, and that made all the difference. If you sense unease in your relationship or notice any financial irregularities or secretive behavior, don't ignore it. Paying attention could be the only thing preventing disaster. I protected what I built because I observed one suspicious detail and refused to turn a blind eye, not out of cynicism, but out of self-preservation. And if someone criticizes you for being careful or paranoid in protecting yourself, that's when you know they intended to exploit you.